Welcome to Comet Computer Private Limited, e-learning program of implementing and administering network technologies. We are going to see about configuring router with basic parameters. We have seen basic details about router in the earlier session, so that will be helpful for understanding about router and its components and some of the basic commands. But now, what we are going to see in this session is once you buy the router, and you have to make some of the basic configurations ready so that you can push the major configurations required as per the network design. So preparation of a router, so that is very important. Based on the requirement, we need to define the details, and then we can go for implementing this. So normally we'll be raising a change request with the required command, and respective change manager will be approving the change. So then we'll do it as per the process. Some of the organizations directly go with raising a service request and do the changes. Before getting into production, they will do the validation once, and then they will raise a production change request, and they will add it to the live setup, and they will update that in the CMDB database. So that is the management side process. But technically, what are the commands it is required minimum for making your router ready for connecting it to the production network? Each organization will have defined their standards, but these commands are very common and mandatory also. So that will be helpful for you as a fresher, or you are just taking up the networking path for becoming a network engineer or network administrator. So this will be very useful. So just we'll go through the command one by one. The first one is assigning a host name for the router. So what happens here is, whether in the last session I mentioned it. So whether it is a router or switch, the default name will be the device name itself, router. So we have to go for changing the name. So configuring a terminal, we have to do it in the global mode. You know, different modes, right? For first line is in the privilege user mode. To move to the privilege mode, we are typing the command enable, and then we are coming to the privilege mode. So now this hostname command will not be executed in the privilege mode, because this is very common to the entire device. It is not going to be very specific. It's a common parameter change, right? So common configuration change. It has to happen in the global configuration mode. So I have to move from privilege mode to the configuration mode. So I type the configure terminal. I can use the short form conf t or configure t. It still the router will understand and execute the command. Okay, those are the short forms. But for practice purpose, what I recommend is for the freshers, new people, run type the command fully so that you will get familiarized it. Once you get familiarized, you can use the short forms, right? So that will be helpful. And then what is the requirement now is assigning a host name. So the command name itself is a host name, and whatever name you wanted it, you can type it. And here I'm taking this as a Comet as a reference. But in the organization, the enterprise level, corporate level organizations, assigning name itself is a, big standard one. Okay, so now for example, the naming standard should be followed by the organizations. They'll have some standards like it has to be easily identifiable with the country, state, region, branch. So everything should be easily traceable. So normally what they will do, they'll use a three-character format standard for assigning the host name. For example, we have, I'll take an example for assigning a name. So if at all I have a global operations available in my organization, so I have to go for segregating whether it is which country and all. Suppose I have a device at India, so I'll take first three characters as IND, and I have branch across India, maybe Chennai, Delhi, Bangalore, all those things. So to specify which city I am going to be in, the device is in, so I'll use another three character like CHN or BLR or PUN. So those things are standard names used by the organizations. So CHN, and now within Chennai you have more number of branches. Okay, so within Chennai. Okay, so you have to identify which office it is. Okay, so maybe your office is at OMR. Maybe if you are having only one office in OMR, okay, no problem. If you have multiple offices in OMR, then you have to segregate in OMR, like you have Thorepakam or other. So within the city, you have some identification mark, whatever it is, because people will from different places, they cannot understand the local city and other stuff. Based on your things, what I'm saying, you have a city. Chennai, for example, it is a big city. Okay, within the city, you have multiple branches. So identify the branch. Maybe I have a branch at OMR. Okay, so I mentioned it. And in OMR, which building it is? Maybe the office will have three or four buildings. So I have to be very specific which building. That is building BLD or SDB, whatever it is. Building 1. Is that sufficient? No. So because in the building, I may have multiple switches so or routers. So what I have to do in the floors, okay, so floor 1 or 2, whatever it is, maybe based on your choices you define it. And now in the floor 1, how many switches or how many routers are there? Maybe I have 10 routers. So what I will do, I will take this as a uh, router 1. So if I want to assign a host name for a router, this is the standard I'm going to use. So I can have 255 characters for the host name, but I cannot remember all the 255 characters, right? But this will give me idea like where the device is. I have office at US, Canada, Brazil, whatever it is. Now I can easily find out the device. This device is in India. In India, it is in Chennai. In Chennai, it is in OMR. In OMR, it is in multiple building. But I have the devices from my SDB1, and in that building, 10 floors are there. So this router is in first floor. In first floor, I have 10 routers. This router, what I'm referring is router 1. That's it. Okay. So this will be the normal prompt. So normally the network administrator remembers the IP address. They can directly use the IP address for logging into the router and other stuff. Otherwise, we can use this name. Okay. So this is how we form a naming standard for any kind of device. This is applicable for switches, firewalls, servers. Okay. So for easy identification, all these things we are using. So now, once you give the name for testing purpose, we just give a short name. See, it's all depends on your organization. I'm not going to push you to follow the standard, or maybe it is bigger, it is very difficult to remember. You have any better methodology, please go ahead. But it should have a standard one. If suppose you have some five network engineers, each engineer cannot follow a different standards on their own. We'll have a lot of problems, right? So we should have a common standard. Maybe you name it separately as per your requirement, but everybody should follow it. Fine, in network engineer should follow the same naming standard. So that is a process, right? So that is on configuring the host name for the router. So one thing you have to remember, one side you have to follow technicality, okay, technical requirements, technical knowledge. The other side you should also have a process knowledge. What is that followed in that particular organization? So ITL process, what I'm referring now, it is a common process, okay, and it is a tailor-made. Each company can modify as per their convenience, okay. So if you are moving from one organization to other organization, the process followed for incident change, other things may be different from this company to that company. As soon as you join, you have to understand, learn the process what they are following. Okay, so that's a general thing what we have to discuss here. Okay, so copy command it is very much required because I told no. So DRAM, the running configurations, the command whatever we type, it is stored in running configuration. So that has to move to the startup configuration. So I need to use a command called copy. Okay, so again I'm saying this is a lengthy command. You can even short form it, copy space run space start. Okay, even that it will take, or you can type the command write. So WR, even then the configuration will get stored. But in the initial stages, I recommend to type the commands fully. Maybe you can use the tabs to fill the commands, auto fill the commands. Then assign the IP address. So here, IP address will be given to the interface level. You have a serial interface, you have Ethernet interface, BRI, whatever it is. So each interface, whenever we connect it with the network, with other devices, we go for providing the IP address. Okay, so this is the process for assigning the IP address. Get into the interface now, starting from user execute mode, type the command enable to move to the privilege mode. From the privilege mode, type the command configure terminal to enter into global configuration mode. So from the global configuration mode, type the command interface and which is the interface you are interested. Okay, so here I can type int alone, short form int e0. Okay, it will take me to the interface level. Then IP address, this is the syntax. We have to follow the syntax, and you should be ready with the IP address. You should not think while typing the command in router, right? Because you are designing the network, you know the details, which IP address has to be assigned for the router. So normally what we will do, we'll put a design in a paper and or in a picture so that we can easily track what is the IP we are going to have it. Okay, so that detail will be available in the handy with the network administrator. And we have to run the command no shutdown. Okay, so this is very important. Normally in the troubleshooting level, we used to get this kind of issues. We run the command IP space address and provide the IP address and just copy and exit. But what happens in the later stage? Okay, so since we are not using the command no shutdown, the interface will be in the down state. After checking all these things, you raise a ticket with Cisco, so we'll have a lot of problems, right? We have spent a lot of time. So if you don't enable this interface, then the interface will not work. Okay, so the command for enabling the interface is no shutdown. By default, if you buy a new device, the interface will be in the shutdown state. So what we have to do, we should go for typing the command no shutdown. In Cisco, whatever command you type, just put no, it becomes opposite command. So that is easy for understanding and easy to remember. You want to shut down the device, use the command shutdown. You want to enable the device, use the command add no to that command. So no shutdown, that's it. In the same way, I assigned IP address just now, but I don't want to go with this IP address. How do I delete? So just go to the same prompt, interface prompt, same command, add no to it. So IP address, you have a command, right? Just add no and press enter at the end. So the IP address will get vanished. Then assign a new IP address. That is how we change. We can overwrite also, but the initial stage we have to follow this very slowly so that you can grasp it correctly and execute it properly. Okay. So again, copy command we are using for copying the content. See, each and every screen, I am just adding line as a copy command, so that this getting registered in your mind, whatever I do in my router, I should copy. Okay. So if you take anything in the router, say this one, I'm just typing the banner command, and once I press enter in that second line or third line, the command will start work because I'm loading the configuration into the running configuration. Okay. And router will read it from the running configuration and it will start work. If I say disable, it will disable. If I say enable, it will get enable. Okay, because router will read any instructions from the running configurations. So it will start work immediately. But if I'm not copying the command to the startup configuration, what will happen? So next time when I reboot, we don't know when we'll reboot, right? Normally, as per the process, we do the reboot whenever there is an issue, P1 issue or firmware upgrade, maybe 6 months once or 1 year once. So meanwhile, if I don't copy this command and if I reboot suddenly, all the configuration in the running configuration will go off. Okay, so I have to move the command to startup so that whenever the router reboots, it will refer only the new commands, added, updated commands. When the router is loading, the startup configuration is getting loaded into the memory and it becomes a running configuration, right? From NVRAM to DRAM. and any new commands added to it as on date, that will be added into the NVRAM only, I mean DRAM only first, as a running configuration only first. Until otherwise, I run the command as a copy, it will not go to the NVRAM. Okay, so that is the mandatory thing you should remember. So this banner message, we use it for just identifying any a message to the user who is logging in, just to understand which company or whether it is the right company I'm logging in, or I should log off. Otherwise, no, we'll get some cybercrime related investigations. So to avoid that, we are putting a banner message just to intimate others that this is the corporate device and regulated device. So you should not enter into it. Something like putting a danger post or a red cross so that people cannot cross this line, right? So likewise. So here what we have to notice, you can start with any special character. The command is banner space MOTD. MOTD is message of the day. And for this, I have to use some special character. I can use a hash, I can use dollar, but whatever character I use in the starting of the line, I should use the same command in the ending of the line. So here I'm using welcome to Comet Computer Private Limited as a message, or I can add any other lines also based on my requirement or organization requirement. Again, this standard message is given by the organization. I should copy and paste it here. I cannot type my own. This is not my device. Okay, this is the corporate device. Okay. So once I did it, and if I log into the router again, I'll get that message. Okay. Anyway, we'll see that in the practice session. To set up a timeout for a router. So security purpose, it is always mandatory to have a timeout. The systems will get locked. Our screen saver will just come and protect your screen. Okay, and if at all you want to enter, you need to give a password. Okay, that is the level of security what we maintain. The timeout may be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever it is, depending on the um, company, right? The same way we are going to give a timeout for router, because if suppose the administrator left the console just like that and went for a bio break or any other activity, taking a photocopy or taking a printouts, whatever it is, if he is not in the desk and somebody can take a control of it, the next person or whoever is not liking that person, he will take a control of it. He or she will just go and shut down the device, whatever the device he logged into the console, right? He doesn't know whether it is a, core switch or distribution switch, whatever it is. He will see the console is open, so he can type the command shutdown. That's it, nothing big you have to do. Type the command, simply shut down. The entire device will get shut down, and you don't know what happened and who have done it. So after the investigation, they can easily find out it is done by you, because your username and password is there already in the console session, right? In the terminal session. So now to protect it from the real-time challenges, right? So what we have to do is setting up the timeout, execute timeout. So normally 1 minute or 2 minutes is sufficient. If I'm not in the desk for a minute, or if I'm not touching anything on the console, maybe I'm working on the other window in my system, I'm not touching anything in the console of the server, console of the router, so that will get automatically timed out. So like your banking website, even if you just switch to some other website by pressing tab and come after 5 minutes, the session will give expired with the banks because of the security purpose. So the same way we have to set up the time, but do not go for 30 seconds and all. 1 minute or more than 1 minute is okay. Don't go for longer duration also, 5 minutes, 10 minutes and all. So 2 minutes or 3 minutes, okay, right? So if I move from the desk within 3 minutes, if somebody come and log in, that is a big problem. But normally, so if I leave the desk as it is, it will take some 3 minutes to sign out. I mean, the sense log out. Okay, so normally Windows will take some 5 minutes to 15 minutes time as per the group policy they have. So router, as we are configuring, then we have to make sure it is less duration. So this is the execute timeout for the router. Again, we have to copy the command, otherwise it will not work. Logging synchronous. Normally, whenever we type in the router, we get lot of messages mentioning this interface is up, this interface is down, and other log related messages. So that has to be stored for tracking purpose. But if it is continuously coming in your screen, that will become a kind of disturbance, right? So to avoid that, what we have to do, we have to run this command logging synchronous. Again, this has to be run in the line console 0. There is other level, like after the interface level you have seen, right? This is the other level. So you have to go for console session and use the command logging synchronous. So this will suppress the messages coming in the screen itself. Okay, so otherwise no. As soon as you create interfaces and enable the interface, you will get lot of pop-ups. So that will be a very challenging one for you. To avoid that, we are using this command logging synchronous. Setting date time for a router. This is for a new router, right? Whenever I go for adding a router with the network. But this will be done by NTP, Network Time Protocol. So that will get sync and modify the time. But for knowledge purpose or small organizations, you have to run this command manually, okay, in your router. So the simple syntax, clock space set, hour, minute, second. That is the format we have to use. Then date, month, year. So month should be 3-character format. I tried using it with numbers. It is not accepting. So month should be in the character form, three-letter character form. Okay, so this is the basic configuration command. So in case of real-time network, we'll be having NTP, Network Time Protocol. What I will do, normally in the enterprise network router or switch, we'll be adding the command NTP server. We'll be adding the NTP server with my network so that the network time will get synced for all the devices. That NTP server will sync with the real-time outside server. So that is totally different. But here in this case, it will be referring the local time whatever I set. So this is for practice only, right? In real time, we are going to refer NTP server. Configure router serial interface, DT and DC. So this is only for lab purpose. In real time, we are not going to configure any routers back to back. Okay. So though we are putting up the diagram like between Chennai and Bangalore, I'm connecting the router with the lease line or whatever it is. So the routers are not directly connected. It will be having a kind of CSU, DSU channel devices from the service provider. So normally what happens is router is a DT device. Whichever router we purchase, we are using it is a DT device. And channel service unit or data service unit, what we have from ISP, that is a box, right? It is a DC device. So the real time, it will go via DT-DC communication and it will pass on the information. But uh, in case of normal thing, it is not required because we'll be using the live connections. So in case of lab setup, we need a back-to-back connection. Okay, we need a back-to-back connection. So any one device, see, I said it is a DT device. If you are connecting other device to it, it will be also DT device, so it will not work. The network communication or whatever it is, it will not happen between the device. So what we have to do, we have to manually go and make it as a DC device. But in the simulation, some of the time I have seen, based on the connection, it makes any one router as a DC router. Automatically, other router becomes a DT router. So anyway, the routers are default by default it is DT device. We are trying to change it as a DC. Okay, then so that it can communicate between the routers. This is a simple diagram. The top one is showing that we have a DC device from the service provider. It's a DSL modem which is connected to the internet. The other side, our company router and other switch and the desktops. The second diagram is the lab setup diagram where I'm going to connect the routers back to back and the switches and the testing machine so that I can see the real scenario what happens when something is going wrong. So this bottom second one is created only for testing purpose. If I have the resource, I can do it in the real time. Real time, I can directly connect to two routers and two switches. but based on the demand rate, we don't have it, so we go for using the cable and other stuff. Okay, so for connecting both the devices back to back. So one device should be made as DC. The command used for making the DC is if you see the output from packet tracer, which I'm going to use it as a tool for establishing the communication, it is having the configuration as a DC only. But only thing is we have to enable it. We'll see. So I have a command called clock rate. Okay, clock space rate. Here it is referred as a BPS, bits per second. Okay, clock rate is measured in the standard of bits per second. Now, I have various speeds available starting from 1200 to 55,000 and more than that also available. So you can configure that available space. Let us take the value as this much, or we can take any other value 55,000 or 19,200, whatever it is. So this is bits per second. So you can see here, once I make the change, so the serial interface show controllers S0 slash 2 slash 0, that becomes a DC device and clock rate is set. Alternatively, for the clock rate command, I have bandwidth command. Bandwidth is measured in kilobytes. Okay, so the earlier one is bits per BPS. This is BPS. This is kilobytes. So here I have kilobits. Okay, so here I have to mention command as a bandwidth, then space, how much I wanted to approve kilobits, how much kilobits I have to approve. It is 10, 20, or 100, whatever it is. You have different range available. Within that range, you can choose and assign the value. So troubleshooting router connections with the show interfaces. So I'm just typing the show interface command. So that gives the detail about the interface configuration parameters. So we have to see the runs, geons, throttles, input errors, CRC. In the middle, you can see in the line, fifth line, right? Fourth or fifth line. So watchdog, multicast, pass input, various parameters it is capturing. The important parameter, what we are going to see is the input errors or the frame overrun or multicasting. So these are all the very valid inputs based on which you can find out the reason for slowness or reason for issue. So this interface command is helping you to find out the basic failure reasons. So no buffer, ignored. So if the packet buffers are full, packets will be dropped. So it will be ignored. It will not go and store again into the particular environment. Runs, frames that did not meet the minimum frame size requirements of 55 bytes. I have to have a 55 bytes and above, but if any frame is less than 55 bytes, 30, 40, 43 and all, so it will be called as a runs because that may have some misses in the data, so the data packet is not complete. So that's why we call it as a runs. Geons, if any frame size is beyond 1518, that we call it as a geons. It is this itself is bigger, so we are going for higher values also. Input errors, if there is any error, it will show it. We have some mechanisms like FRC, CRC, frame check sequence, FCS, packets output. So all these things will be helping you to find out where there is a error. Output errors, there are different types of errors available. If there is some disturbance in the line, so you'll be getting a lot of errors into the outside network. So one is the outside output errors, total number of packets that the switch port tried to transmit, but for which some problem occurred. So output is not available immediately to the devices or network. Collisions between two packets, if there is any collide happens, we call it as a collision. Late collisions. So if you are going for um, different types of activity, so and that we are tracking now, all collisions should occur by 55th byte of the frame. We are sending a lot of packets, but due to signal strength or any other issue, we are seeing the buffer receiving time is different for different people. Okay, so that is called late collisions because of the delay in traffic, delay in the activity. We didn't get any result. So that is called late collisions. History command. This is very much useful because if I know previous command, I can just press up arrow or down arrow. I can get the command. I can type it again. Okay, that is a history command. Maximum buffer size is 256 and terminal history size is 25. Minimum we can have 10 also. Okay, so I can reduce to 10 instead of 25. These are the list of history commands. You can use it to go through it. And show commands. So show commands are generally used for um, getting the details. Okay, so opening and seeing the commands, right? So what is there in the specific individual commands, we can see it as a detailed one. Okay, show version, show running configuration, show startup configuration. It'll give you line by line. Okay, show flash, you can easily find out what is the operating system available. And show interface, your interface, right? So you can get the details about the interface. Okay, show IP interface brief. So this one is going to show you overall interface available and whether it is up or down. In the logical status, if you see the error message, interface status message, if you put show interface E0 slash 0, okay, if that is a syntax what you are going to use, you will see first one is a serial 0 is up, second one is a line protocol is up. Okay, so first one physical layer belongs to physical layer. If there is any physical layer, and then second is a logical layer. If there is any issue in the physical layer, it can immediately um, uh, mention it here. So by seeing the message, we can find out, okay, there is a cable cut or there is a noise issue. So all those physical type of connections, we can find out. Second one is a logical connection, right? So if there is more drop, our signal strength is very weak because of more noise. So that will show it up. And the clock rate you have set one, and the other person have set other side different. So we'll not have any sync. So in that case also we'll get line protocol is down. So we should ensure that we are having same kind of parameter during connections. We can see it. So first one is a physical kind of connection. Second one is a logical kind of connection. So we have to ensure both physically and logically we are able to connect it to the network. So different status messages are available. So some of the important points, show command will work only in privilege mode, not in other mode. So if you are in a global configuration mode or interface configuration mode, you can add do, and then run the same command, show command. But normally it will not work in other levels. So you don't want to test it. Copy command should be used in privilege mode. So always copy operation should follow the pattern. It should be used in the privilege mode. And I already said adding no will take you to the reversal of a command. The question mark is helping you to get more input about the commands. So now we have to see the live session. I'll close this session now. We'll see a live session, separate uh, session. Thank you.